The Galactic Council chambers hummed with the usual mixture of languages, each species contributing their own melodic tones to the vast symphony of diplomacy. Ambassador Zephyr of the Altarian Federation adjusted her crystalline breathing apparatus as she reviewed the morning's agenda. Trade disputes, territorial negotiations, and the ongoing debate about mining rights in the Outer Rim territories filled the holographic display before her. "Next item," announced the Council's AI moderator, its voice echoing through the massive chamber that housed representatives from over 300 species. "Archaeological findings from Sector 7 Alpha, submitted by the Corvin Research Division." A reptilian Corvin scientist materialized via hologram at the center of the chamber. His scaled hands gestured excitedly as he began his presentation. "Honored Council members, we have discovered something extraordinary. On a forgotten world in the far reaches of Sector 7 Alpha, we found ruins, ancient structures that predate our earliest civilizations." The chamber fell silent. Archaeological discoveries were rare, but finding ruins older than the oldest known civilizations was unprecedented. The Vorthan Empire had records dating back 50,000 years, and even they had found no evidence of earlier spacefaring cultures. "What makes these ruins significant?" asked Councillor Thex, a massive insectoid whose compound eyes glittered with curiosity. The Corvin's excitement was palpable. "The construction techniques, the materials used, even the basic architecture suggests a species we have never encountered. But most intriguing are the symbols carved throughout the structures. They appear to be a form of written language, completely unlike anything in our databases." Images flooded the chamber's displays. Crumbling stone buildings rose from overgrown landscapes. Metal structures, corroded but still standing, reached toward alien skies. And everywhere, carved deep into stone and etched into metal, were strange markings that seemed almost familiar yet completely foreign. "Have you attempted translation?" Ambassador Zephyr found herself asking, though she couldn't explain why the images stirred something deep in her memory cores. "We have tried everything. The language appears to be symbolic, possibly representing concepts rather than sounds. But there is something else." The Corvin paused dramatically. "We found what appears to be a central archive. A vast underground chamber filled with data storage devices. Most are too damaged to access, but we managed to extract fragments from several." The chamber's lighting dimmed as a new set of images appeared. These were different. Instead of symbols, they showed star charts, navigation routes, trade agreements written in multiple languages, including several that current galactic civilizations still used. "This civilization," the Corvin continued, "appears to have had contact with the ancestors of many species represented in this very chamber. The Altarians, the Vorthans, the Kalari Commonwealth, even the ancient Zephyrian tribes, all have linguistic traces in these archives." Murmurs filled the chamber. The implications were staggering. If an unknown civilization had been in contact with their ancestors, why were there no records? Why had this species simply vanished from galactic memory? "There is more," the Corvin said, and his voice carried a note of uncertainty. "We found references to something they called the long sleep. Multiple documents suggest this civilization didn't die out. They chose to hibernate. To wait. Wait for what?" Councillor Thex's mandibles clicked nervously. "We don't know. The fragments are incomplete, but there are coordinates. Locations scattered throughout the galaxy where they established what they called awakening stations. The data suggests these stations were designed to monitor galactic activity and trigger a revival process when certain conditions were met." Ambassador Zephyr felt her crystalline core pulse with an emotion she couldn't identify. "Fear? Anticipation? How many of these stations have you located?" 17 so far. But our deep space sensors indicate there may be hundreds more. The troubling part is that several appear to be showing signs of activation. Energy signatures that have been dormant for millennia are beginning to fluctuate." The chamber erupted in worried chatter. Representatives demanded more information. Others called for immediate investigation, and a few suggested military preparation. Ambassador Zephyr noticed that the Corvin scientist looked genuinely frightened. "There is one final detail," the Corvin said, and his voice cut through the noise. "We managed to translate one word that appears frequently throughout their archives. It seems to be what they called themselves." He paused, his reptilian features showing deep concern. "They called themselves humans." The word hung in the air like a curse. No one in the chamber had ever heard it before, yet somehow it carried weight. It felt dangerous, like the name of something that should remain forgotten. "What do we know about their capabilities?" asked the Vorthon representative, a being whose multiple arms gestured in complex patterns that indicated deep worry. "Based on the archaeological evidence, they were technologically advanced beyond anything we've seen. Their construction techniques suggest they could manipulate matter at the molecular level. Their star charts show they had mapped regions of space we've never explored. And their weapons," the Corvin's voice trailed off. "What about their weapons?" Counselor Thex demanded. "We found testing facilities, vast underground complexes where they appears to have developed technologies we can barely comprehend. Devices that could destabilize stars, weapons that could crack planets, and something they referred to as species-specific biotoxins." The chamber fell completely silent. Even the usual background hum of life support systems seemed muted. "And you believe they're awakening?" Ambassador Zephyr asked quietly. "The energy signatures are unmistakable. Something is responding to current galactic activity. The question isn't whether they're awakening. The question is what they'll find when they do." As if summoned by his words, alerts began flooding the chamber's communication systems. Deep space monitoring stations across the galaxy were reporting the same phenomenon. Ancient structures previously undetected were powering up. Long-dormant signals were beginning to broadcast across subspace frequencies. The humans, whoever they had been, were stirring, and the galaxy was about to remember why they had been forgotten. Ambassador Zephyr stared at the star charts showing the awakening stations and felt a chill run through her crystalline form. In all her centuries of diplomatic service, she had never encountered anything that filled her with such instinctive dread. The humans were coming back, and something told her the galaxy was utterly unprepared for their return. Captain Vex of the Altarian Deep Space Monitoring Fleet had seen many strange things during his 40-year career. Quantum anomalies that defied physics, alien artifacts that hummed with impossible energies, and space phenomena that challenged everything scientists thought they knew about the universe. But nothing had prepared him for the readings coming from monitoring station Epsilon 7. "Sir, you need to see this." His communications officer, a young Kalari named Senna, called from her station. Her forearms moved rapidly across the control interface, her bioluminescent patches flashing in patterns that indicated extreme agitation. Vex approached the central display, his 6 eyes focusing on the data streams flowing across the screens. "What am I looking at?" 3 hours ago, we detected a massive energy surge from coordinates 847221 Alpha. The readings don't match anything in our databases. "But sir, that's not the strange part." Senna's patches dimmed to a worried blue. "The energy signature is spreading. It's jumping from location to location across the galaxy, following a pattern we can't predict." The main display showed a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red dots appeared in seemingly random locations, each one pulsing with increasing intensity. As Vex watched, another dot appeared, then another. The pattern meant nothing to him, but the rate of activation was accelerating. "How many locations are active now?" Vex asked. 47 and counting." "Sir, some of these coordinates are in heavily populated systems. The Vorthon Empire, the Zalari core worlds, even the neutral zone between the Hegan Confederacy and the Raxan Unity." Vex studied the map more carefully. The locations seemed random, but there was something about their distribution that nagged at him. It was almost as if they formed a network, a carefully planned system designed to monitor or control vast regions of space. "Sir," interrupted his science officer, a methodical Draknari whose gray skin had turned almost white with concern. "I'm detecting massive power buildups at each location. These aren't just activating randomly. Something is coordinating them." Before Vex could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed the command center in red as automated systems detected something unprecedented. "Report," Vex barked. Senna's patches had gone completely white, a Kalari distress signal that meant she was struggling to process what she was seeing. "Sir, we're detecting a subspace transmission. It's broadcasting from all active locations simultaneously, using frequencies we've never encountered. Put it through the translators." "Sir, that's the problem. Our universal translators aren't recognizing it as language at all. The pattern suggests communication, but it's unlike anything any known species uses." Vex felt his primary heart skip a beat. Throughout the galaxy, countless species used different methods of communication. Some used sound, others used electromagnetic pulses, a few even communicated through controlled gravitational waves. but the universal translators had been built over millennia to handle every known form of language. If they couldn't process this transmission, it meant they were dealing with something completely new. Can you isolate any patterns? Anything that might give us a clue about intent? The Dreknari science officer manipulated his controls with precise movements. Sir, the transmission appears to be diagnostic in nature. It's running through what looks like system checks, status reports, and, sir, it's scanning us. Scanning us? The transmission frequencies are actively probing our communication systems, our defensive networks, even our biological signatures. Whatever is sending this is learning about us in real time. The command center fell silent, except for the hum of machinery and the occasional beep of monitoring equipment. Vex realized they might be witnessing first contact with an unknown civilization, but everything about the situation felt wrong. The hidden locations, the coordinated activation, the invasive scanning. This felt less like a greeting and more like a strategic assessment. Sir, Senna's voice cracked with excitement and fear. The transmission just changed. It's adapting. The universal translators are starting to pick up fragments. Static filled the command center's speakers, then gradually words began to emerge. The voice that spoke was unlike anything they had ever heard. It carried harmonics that suggested it was designed to be understood by multiple species simultaneously, as if the speaker knew exactly how to communicate with beings they had never met. Assessment complete. Galactic political structure analyzed. Technological advancement adequate. Biological diversity acceptable. Threat level minimal. Awakening protocols initiated. The transmission cut to silence. Every screen in the command center went dark for exactly 3 seconds, then returned to normal. But the damage was done. Whatever had been scanning them had finished its evaluation, and somehow, Vex doubted they had passed whatever test they had just been subjected to. Sir, the Dreknari science officer said quietly, I'm detecting movement. What kind of movement? Something large is emerging from the planetary surface at coordinates 847221 Alpha. Our long-range sensors show a structure rising from what we thought was empty terrain. Sir, it's massive. Preliminary readings suggest it's over 50 kilometers in length. The main display shifted to show long-range sensor data from the emergence point. What they saw defied explanation. A sleek metallic structure was rising from the planet's surface like a mountain coming to life. Its design was unlike anything in their databases. Smooth curves combined with angular edges in patterns that seemed both organic and artificial. It's a ship, Vex whispered. Sir, it's not just one ship. I'm detecting similar emergence patterns at 17 other locations. They're all rising simultaneously. As they watched, the massive vessels completed their emergence from planets across the galaxy. Each one began moving with purpose, accelerating to speeds that their sensors could barely track. The ships didn't use any propulsion technology they recognized. No engine signatures, no energy trails, just smooth, impossible acceleration that suggested mastery of physics far beyond galactic understanding. Where are they going? Vex asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. They're converging on major population centers. Sir, their projected courses will bring them to the Galactic Council chambers, the Vorthon Imperial capital, the Kalari homeworld, and, sir, they're heading for every major seat of power in the galaxy. Vex stared at the tactical display showing the approaching vessels and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's life support systems. This wasn't random exploration or peaceful contact. This was a carefully planned operation executed by beings who knew exactly where to strike and exactly how to do it. Send a priority alert to Galactic Command, he ordered. Tell them we're dealing with a coordinated emergence of unknown vessels from hidden locations throughout the galaxy. And sir, he added to his communications officer, make sure they understand that whoever is in those ships has been watching us for a very long time. As the alerts went out across subspace, Vex continued watching the approaching vessels. Something told him that the galaxy was about to meet its former masters, and they were not returning as friends. Commander Sarah Chen felt the familiar sensation of consciousness returning as the awakening protocols completed their sequence. The cryogenic chamber around her hissed and clicked as systems that had been dormant for millennia slowly brought her body back to full function. Her eyes opened to the soft blue glow of status indicators, and memory flooded back in carefully programmed waves. Earth, the Great War, the decision to sleep. the promise to wake when humanity was needed again. She sat up slowly, her muscles responding with surprising efficiency considering how long she had been under. The hibernation technology had worked perfectly, preserving not just her body but her mind, her memories, and most importantly, her purpose. "Status report," she said to the empty chamber, her voice hoarse but strong. The AI that had monitored her sleep for 30,000 years responded immediately. "Commander Chen, awakening successful. All biological systems nominal. Neural pathways intact. Memory compression at 98% efficiency. And the galaxy? Significant changes detected. The species we once guided have established a galactic civilization. Current analysis suggests they have forgotten our existence entirely. They call themselves the Galactic Council and believe they are the dominant force in the galaxy." Sarah stood and walked to the chamber's viewing port. Outside, stars wheeled in patterns both familiar and strange. 30,000 years was a long time, even by cosmic standards. How many of us answered the awakening call? 107 stations have responded. Approximately 15,000 personnel are currently being revived. The deep sleep protocol worked as designed. Humanity endures. Sarah nodded, though the number was smaller than she had hoped. When humanity had made the decision to enter the long sleep, nearly 1 million volunteers had been placed in hidden stations throughout the galaxy. Time, equipment failure, and cosmic accidents had taken their toll, but 15,000 humans were more than enough for what needed to be done. What triggered the awakening? The AI paused, a behavior that in any other system would indicate processing problems, but in this case suggested the answer was complex. "Multiple factors, Commander. Galactic civilization has reached a critical threshold. Their expansion has begun to threaten cosmic stability. More importantly, they have started experimenting with technologies we classified as extinction class." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the hibernation chamber. "Show me." Holographic displays materialized around her, showing her a galaxy transformed. Where once humans had carefully guided young civilizations towards stability and growth, now those same species had grown wild and reckless. They strip-mined star systems without thought for long-term consequences. They had developed weapons capable of destroying entire worlds. Most disturbing of all, they were experimenting with dimensional manipulation technology that could unravel the fabric of space-time itself. "They've forgotten everything we taught them," Sarah whispered. "Not forgotten, Commander. They never knew they were being taught. The guidance protocols were designed to appear natural, to let each species believe they had discovered things on their own. It was meant to prevent dependence." Sarah studied the reports flowing across the displays. In their absence, the galaxy had become a powder keg. 3 major wars had been fought in the last 5,000 years, each one more devastating than the last. Several species had gone extinct, not from natural causes but from their own weapons. The delicate balance humanity had spent millions of years establishing was crumbling. What is the current recommendation of the Strategic Council? The other commanders are being briefed as they awaken. Initial consensus suggests we have 3 options. First, remain hidden and allow galactic civilization to either stabilize or destroy itself. Second, reveal ourselves and attempt to re-establish guidance protocols through diplomacy. Third, implement Restoration Protocol 7. Sarah closed her eyes. She had hoped they would never need to consider Protocol 7. It was the nuclear option, designed for situations where galactic civilization had become so dangerous that it threatened the survival of the universe itself. Assessment of diplomatic success? Low probability. Current galactic leadership shows patterns consistent with late-stage imperial decline. They view themselves as the natural rulers of the galaxy and would likely respond to our emergence with military force. Additionally, their technology, while crude compared to ours, is sufficient to cause significant damage to galactic infrastructure. Sarah opened her eyes and looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, her fellow humans were awakening to the same terrible choices. They had slept for 30 millennia hoping to wake to a galaxy that had learned wisdom. Instead, they had awakened to find their children playing with weapons that could destroy everything. Put me in contact with the other station commanders. It's time for the Strategic Council to reconvene. Over the next several hours, as hibernation systems across the galaxy completed their awakening cycles, humanity's greatest minds began to reconnect. Admiral Marcus Webb, who had coordinated humanity's original expansion through the galaxy. Dr. Elena Vasquez, whose understanding of cosmic engineering had made their hidden civilization possible. General David Kim, whose strategic brilliance had ended the Great War and made the long sleep possible. They appeared as holograms in Sarah's command center, their faces showing the same mixture of hope and dread that she felt. "Status reports," Sarah said without preamble. Admiral Webb spoke first. "Pacific Command is operational. All 12 stations in this sector responded to awakening protocols. Fleet assets are powering up, but it will take time to bring everything online. We're looking at 48 hours before we're at full operational status." Dr. Vasquez followed. "Industrial complexes are functional. The automated systems maintained our manufacturing capabilities perfectly. We can begin producing whatever we need, but the question is, what exactly do we intend to produce?" General Kim looked grim. "Tactical assessment is not encouraging. Galactic military forces significantly outnumber our active personnel. However, their technology remains approximately 3,000 years behind ours. We could achieve tactical superiority, but at tremendous cost." Sarah nodded. The numbers were what she had expected, but hearing them confirmed made the situation feel more real. "Options? Limited engagement," suggested Admiral Webb. "We reveal ourselves gradually, demonstrate our superiority, and negotiate from a position of strength." "That assumes they're capable of rational negotiation," Dr. Vasquez countered. "Current data suggests galactic leadership is fragmented and prone to panic responses. They might unite against us, or they might tear themselves apart trying to either fight us or join us." General Kim leaned forward. "There is another consideration. Our analysis suggests several galactic powers are close to achieving breakthrough technologies that could rival our own. If we wait too long, our technological advantage may disappear." Sarah considered their words carefully. Every option carried enormous risks. Reveal themselves too slowly, and galactic civilization might develop countermeasures. Reveal themselves too quickly, and they might trigger a war that would devastate the galaxy. Do nothing, and they might wake up again in another 30,000 years to find nothing left but cosmic dust. "There is one more factor to consider," she said quietly. "Our psychological profiles. We've been asleep for 30,000 years. We remember a galaxy where we were protectors and guides, but look at what we've awakened to. Can we honestly say our judgment isn't compromised by what we've lost?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. They were no longer the humanity that had chosen the long sleep. They were strangers in their own galaxy, awakening to find that their life's work had crumbled to dust. "Recommendations?" Sarah asked. General Kim spoke first. "Protocol 7, quick, clean, surgical. We re-establish control before they can mount effective resistance." Admiral Webb shook his head. "That makes us conquerors, not protectors. I recommend limited revelation. Show them enough to get their attention, then negotiate." Dr. Vasquez looked troubled. "Both options assume we have the right to make this choice for them. Maybe we should consider the possibility that our time is simply over." Sarah looked at each of her old friends and colleagues, seeing in their faces the same struggle she felt. They had awakened expecting to find grateful children who had learned wisdom in their absence. Instead, they had found armed adolescents playing with nuclear weapons. "I need 12 hours to review all data," she said finally. "Then we make our choice. But understand this. Whatever we decide will determine the fate of every living being in this galaxy. We cannot afford to be wrong." As the holograms faded, Sarah turned back to the viewport and stared out at the stars. Somewhere in that vast darkness, galactic civilization continued its reckless expansion, unaware that humanity was watching and preparing to act. The question was no longer whether they would intervene. The question was how fierce they would need to be to save the galaxy from itself. Ambassador Zephyr stood before the emergency assembly of the Galactic Council, her crystalline form pulsing with barely controlled fear. The council chambers, usually filled with the dignified debates of hundreds of species, now buzzed with panic. Reports were flooding in from across the galaxy, each one more disturbing than the last. "The vessels have reached 18 major systems," she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. "They are not responding to any communication attempts. Worse, they are taking defensive positions around critical infrastructure." Counselor Thex's compound eyes glittered with agitation. "What do you mean by defensive positions?" "They are positioning themselves near space stations, planetary defense networks, and communication hubs. Not attacking, but clearly establishing control over strategic assets." Zephyr paused, consulting her data tablet. "The Vorthan Empire reports that 3 vessels have surrounded their primary orbital shipyard. The Kalari Commonwealth says unknown ships are hovering over their main communication array. And the Hegan Confederacy? What about the Confederacy? Demanded the Hegan representative, his multiple tentacles writhing with anxiety. The ships there have done something to your planetary defense grid. It's still functional, but control has been transferred to the unknown vessels. They now control the most powerful defensive network in your space. The chamber erupted in worried chatter. Representatives demanded military action, others called for evacuation protocols, and a few suggested attempting to negotiate despite the lack of response to communication attempts. Order, bellowed the council's moderator. We need facts, not panic. What do our best analysts say about these vessels? Dr. Corvin stepped forward, the same scientist who had discovered the ruins that started this crisis. His scaled features showed deep concern. The technology we're observing defies our current understanding. These ships appear to manipulate gravity itself for propulsion. They can accelerate to speeds that should tear them apart, yet show no signs of stress. Most disturbing, they seem to possess shields that our sensors cannot penetrate. Are they hostile? Asked the Altarian representative. That's unclear. They haven't fired on anyone, but they've effectively neutered the military capabilities of every system they've entered. It's as if they know exactly which targets would disable our ability to resist without actually harming us. Ambassador Zephyr felt a chill run through her crystalline core. They're not exploring. They're not even invading in any traditional sense. They're securing. Securing for what? Before anyone could answer, every screen in the chamber flickered and went dark. Emergency lighting activated as the Council's communication systems experienced what appeared to be a total failure. Then slowly the screens came back online, but instead of their usual displays, they showed a single image. A face looked out at them from every screen. It was unlike any species they had encountered. Bilateral symmetry, two forward-facing eyes, skin that seemed smooth yet somehow durable. The being's expression was calm, almost gentle, but there was something in those eyes that suggested vast intelligence and equally vast weariness. When it spoke, the voice was transmitted directly through their universal translators, but somehow everyone in the chamber understood it was speaking in its original language. The translation felt artificial, as if the being was deliberately making itself understood rather than actually speaking their languages. Members of the Galactic Council, the being said, I am Commander Sarah Chen of the Human Strategic Command. We have returned. The word human sent ripples of recognition through the chamber. This was the species the archaeologists had discovered, the ones who had supposedly entered the long sleep millennia ago. You do not remember us, Commander Chen continued. But we remember you. We watched your species take their first steps into space. We guided your early civilizations through their most dangerous periods. We taught you, protected you, and loved you as our children. Counselor Thex clicked his mandibles nervously. If you were our protectors, where have you been? Commander Chen's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. We withdrew because we hoped you would learn wisdom in our absence. We believed that without our constant guidance, you would grow into responsible stewards of the galaxy. We were wrong. The chamber fell silent. The implications of her words were staggering. This species claimed to have been their guides, their teachers, perhaps even their creators in some sense. You have developed weapons capable of sterilizing worlds, Commander Chen continued. You have strip-mined star systems without regard for the consequences. You have started 3 galactic wars in the past 5,000 years. Most concerning, you have begun experimenting with dimensional manipulation technology that could unravel the fabric of space-time itself. Ambassador Zephyr found her voice. If you are our former protectors, why haven't you simply made contact? Why this show of force? For the first time, Commander Chen's expression showed emotion. Sadness, perhaps, or disappointment. Because we know you too well. Your first response to superior technology is always military. Your first instinct when faced with something you don't understand is to either conquer it or destroy it. We have secured key strategic assets not because we wish to harm you, but because we need to prevent you from harming yourselves and others while we decide what must be done. And what are you considering doing? Counselor Thex asked, though his tone suggested he feared the answer. That depends on you, Commander Chen replied. We have 3 options. We can withdraw again and hope you eventually learn wisdom. Though our analysis suggests this is unlikely, we can attempt to re-establish our guidance protocols through diplomatic means. Though given your current political structures, this would be extremely difficult. Or what? Ambassador Zephyr whispered. Or, we can implement what we call Restoration Protocol 7. We can remove the current galactic leadership and re-establish direct human oversight of galactic civilization. The chamber erupted in outrage. Representatives shouted about sovereignty, independence, and the right of species to govern themselves. Through the chaos, Commander Chen waited patiently, her expression unchanged. When the noise finally died down, she continued. We do not wish to rule you. We never wanted to rule you, but you have reached a point where your reckless expansion threatens not just yourselves, but the stability of the universe itself. The dimensional manipulation experiments being conducted by the Zalari Research Institute could create a cascade failure that would destroy this entire galactic cluster. Dr. Corvin stepped forward. You're talking about the Quantum Tunnel Project. That research is purely theoretical. No, it isn't. Commander Chen's voice carried absolute certainty. You have successfully created 17 micro-rifts in spacetime. You believe you are developing faster-than-light communication technology. In reality, you are weakening the barriers between dimensions. Continue your current research trajectory and you will accidentally tear a hole in reality that will consume everything within 10,000 light-years. The chamber fell silent again. The Quantum Tunnel Project was classified at the highest levels. If these humans knew about it, they had access to intelligence networks far beyond anything the Galactic Council had imagined. You have 72 hours, Commander Chen said. Either announce the immediate suspension of all dimensional manipulation research and submit to a comprehensive review of your military technologies, or we will assume direct control of galactic civilization. We do not make this ultimatum lightly. We have spent 30,000 years hoping we would never need to make this choice. The screens flickered again, and Commander Chen's image was replaced by countdown timers. 72 hours. The most important deadline in galactic history. Ambassador Zephyr looked around the chamber at her fellow council members. Some were angry, others terrified, and a few seemed resigned. But all of them understood the same thing. They were facing a species that had been their teachers, their protectors, and possibly their creators. A species that had technology beyond their comprehension and the will to use it. What do we do? Someone whispered. Zephyr stared at the countdown timer and realized they were about to discover whether the galaxy's children had learned enough wisdom to survive their parents' return. The humans had awakened, and they were not the gentle guides they had once been. They were something far more dangerous. They were parents who had returned to find their children playing with weapons that could destroy the universe. And parents, Zephyr realized with growing dread, could be absolutely ruthless when protecting their family, even when that meant protecting the family from itself. Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the Humanity's Pride, watching through the massive viewport as the human fleet took positions around the Vorthon imperial capital. The ship beneath his feet was a marvel of engineering that had no equal in the galaxy, a kilometer-long vessel that could manipulate space-time itself for both propulsion and defense. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency, their faces showing the same mixture of determination and regret that he felt. Admiral, his communications officer reported, were receiving surrender offers from 14 different galactic governments. The Kalari Commonwealth is offering to provide tribute. The Hegan Confederacy wants to negotiate a protectorate agreement. The Zalari Institute has already begun shutting down their dimensional research. Webb nodded grimly. And the others? The Vorthan Empire is mobilizing their fleet. The Raxan Unity has declared us hostile invaders. The Altarian Federation is trying to rally a coalition resistance. It was exactly what they had expected. Some of the galaxy's children would bow immediately. Others would fight regardless of the odds, and a few would try to find middle ground. None of the responses changed what had to be done. Status of our forces? All awakening stations are now fully operational. We have 43 capital ships, 112 escort vessels, and approximately 12,000 personnel. Intelligence reports that combined galactic fleets number over 2 million vessels. Webb almost smiled. His tactical officer was new to awakening protocols and didn't yet understand the reality of human, technological superiority. Numbers meant nothing when comparing primitive weapons to advanced ones. Demonstration time, Webb announced. Target the Vorthan 7th Fleet. Make it visible but non-lethal. On the tactical display, he could see the approaching Vorthan warships. 300 vessels of their most advanced design, bristling with weapons that could level cities and shields that had never been penetrated by enemy fire. They approached in perfect military formation, confident in their technological superiority. Webb's ship didn't fire weapons. Instead, it simply focused. The human vessel's reality manipulation systems created a localized gravitational field around the approaching fleet, not strong enough to crush the ships but sufficient to lock them completely in place. 300 warships suddenly found themselves unable to move, their engines straining uselessly against forces they couldn't understand. "Send a message to the Vorthan fleet," Webb ordered. "Tell them their ships are unharmed but completely under our control. They have 1 hour to surrender, or we will demonstrate what our actual weapons can do." Across the galaxy, similar demonstrations were taking place. Human ships were showing galactic military forces that resistance was not just futile, but impossible. They could stop enemy fleets without firing a shot, disable planetary defense systems with a thought, and move through space in ways that defied every law of physics the galaxy thought it understood. But not every species was ready to accept the inevitable. "Admiral," his tactical officer called out, his voice tight with concern. "The Raxan Unity fleet is approaching at maximum speed. They're not responding to warnings and their weapon systems are charging." Webb studied the tactical display. The Raxan Unity had always been the most aggressive of the galactic powers. Their culture valued military strength above all else, and they had built their entire civilization around the concept of never surrendering to superior force. In many ways, Webb respected them for it. In this situation, however, their courage would only lead to tragedy. "How many ships?" he asked. 800 vessels, including their new Dreadnought-class battleships. "Sir, they're powering up their Nova cannons. Those weapons can crack moons." Webb closed his eyes for a moment. The Raxan had developed Nova cannons by studying human ruins they had discovered 3,000 years ago. They had reverse-engineered a pale imitation of human technology and convinced themselves they had created the ultimate weapon. Now they were preparing to use those weapons against their creators. "Open a channel to the Raxan fleet commander." The main screen flickered, showing the bridge of a massive Raxan warship. The creature that appeared was typical of his species. 4 meters tall, covered in natural armor plating, with 6 arms that ended in clawed hands. War Commander Thakvor's reputation for ruthlessness was known throughout the galaxy. "Human," Thakvor said, his voice a rumbling growl. "Your threats mean nothing to the Raxan Unity. We have faced extinction before and emerged stronger. We will not bow to ancient ghosts." Webb felt genuine sadness. "War Commander, I served alongside your ancestor, Thakvin, during the Quasar crisis 8,000 years ago. He was a being of honor who understood when to fight and when to preserve his people. I'm hoping you inherited his wisdom along with his courage." Thakvor's 4 eyes narrowed. "You lie. The histories make no mention of humans in the Quasar crisis. Because we erased ourselves from your histories. We wanted your people to believe they had won their victories alone." Thakvin knew the truth. "He helped us design the containment protocols that saved your homeworld." Webb leaned forward. "War Commander, your Nova cannons are based on technology we abandoned as too dangerous 3 million years ago. They cannot harm our ships, but if you fire them, we will be forced to respond with weapons you cannot imagine. Then you will learn what Raxan steel can accomplish." Thakvor cut the transmission. Webb sighed. "All ships prepare for defensive measures. Do not under any circumstances return fire with lethal force. We're dealing with children who don't understand what they're playing with." The Raxan fleet opened fire with everything they had. Nova cannons that could destroy small moons discharged their fury at the human vessels. Plasma torpedoes that burned at the temperature of stellar cores streaked through space. Energy beams that could slice through asteroids focused on human ship hulls. The human ships simply absorbed it all. Webb's vessel didn't even register the impact. The reality manipulation fields that surrounded each human ship converted the incoming energy into harmless light displays. To the watching Raxan fleet, it appeared as if their most powerful weapons were having no effect whatsoever. "Response options?" Webb asked his tactical officer. "We could disable their weapon systems without damaging the ships. Or we could demonstrate the futility of resistance by disabling their engines, or—" The officer paused. "Or what?" "Admiral, their flagship is powering up something we haven't seen before. It appears to be some kind of experimental quantum destabilizer. Sir, if they fire that weapon and it malfunctions, it could create a subspace rift that would destroy this entire star system." Webb's blood ran cold. The Raxan had somehow developed a primitive version of quantum manipulation technology. They didn't understand what they were dealing with, but if that weapon misfired, it could kill billions of innocent beings. Emergency protocol, he ordered. Disable that weapon immediately. The Humanity's Pride focused its reality manipulation systems on the Raxan flagship. But instead of simply stopping the ship, Webb's vessel reached out and carefully deactivated the quantum weapon at the molecular level. The process required precision that was beyond the comprehension of galactic science, essentially reaching inside the enemy ship and turning off specific systems without affecting anything else to the Raxan crew. It appeared as if their ultimate weapon had simply stopped working. No explosion, no system failure, just sudden, complete shutdown. War Commander, Webb called, reopening the communication channel. Your quantum destabilizer has been permanently disabled. That weapon could have destroyed your entire homeworld if it had misfired. We did not save you from your enemies just to watch you destroy yourselves with weapons you don't understand. Thakfor stared at him in shock. How did you? Our shields were at maximum power. Our hull is intact. How did you reach inside our ship? The same way we reached inside every Raxan facility 8,000 years ago and removed the quantum plague that was killing your people. The same way we reached inside your star and stabilized it when it began showing signs of premature collapse. War Commander, we have been protecting your people for millennia. Please don't force us to protect you from yourselves. The transmission went silent. On the tactical display, Webb could see the Raxan fleet holding position, their weapons powered down but not surrendering. Admiral, his communications officer reported, we're receiving a priority transmission from Commander Chen. Sarah's image appeared on the screen, and Webb could see the strain of command weighing on her. Marcus, status report. Demonstrations complete across all sectors. Most species are complying with the shutdown orders. The Raxan are hesitating, but they're not actively resisting. However, we have a problem. What kind of problem? Intelligence reports that the Zalari Institute didn't actually shut down their dimensional research. They moved it to a hidden facility and accelerated their timeline. Marcus, they're attempting to complete their quantum tunnel project within the next 18 hours. Webb felt his heart sink. The Zalari were the galaxy's most brilliant scientists, but they were also the most arrogant. They believed their intelligence made them immune to consequences. If they succeed, gone. Dr. Elena Vasquez materialized inside the Zalari Institute's most secure research facility through a transportation method that bypassed every known law of physics. One moment she was aboard her command ship. The next, she was standing in the middle of the galaxy's most classified laboratory, surrounded by startled alien scientists who had believed their facility was completely impenetrable. The Zalari researchers froze in terror as this unknown being appeared among them. Elena looked around the laboratory with a mixture of professional curiosity and parental disappointment. The quantum manipulation equipment surrounding her was primitive by human standards, but it was functional enough to tear holes in reality. And from what she could see, they were mere hours away from doing exactly that. Dr. Vextal, I presume, Elena said, addressing the lead researcher whose crystalline form was pulsing with fear patterns. Your work on dimensional barriers is impressive, considering you're working with technology that's approximately 4 million years out of date. How did you get in here? Dr. Vextal stammered. Our security systems are impenetrable. Our location is classified beyond top secret. Elena walked over to the quantum tunnel prototype, studying its construction with the eye of someone who had helped design the original technology eons ago. Your security systems are based on energy barriers and physical locks. We designed the theoretical frameworks your entire civilization uses for spatial manipulation. Did you really think we couldn't walk through walls we taught your ancestors how to build? She touched one of the control interfaces, and immediately the laboratory's systems began displaying readouts that the Zalari scientists had never seen before. Hidden diagnostic screens showed the true status of their experiment, revealing stress patterns in local space-time that their instruments hadn't been sophisticated enough to detect. You're creating micro-fractures in reality, Elena continued, her voice carrying the patience of a teacher explaining a dangerous mistake to a gifted but reckless student. Each test you run makes the barriers between dimensions thinner. You believe you're developing communication technology, but you're actually building a weapon that will destroy everything within 10,000 light-years. Dr. Vexital's fear patterns shifted to confusion. You're wrong. Our calculations show the dimensional barriers will remain stable. The quantum tunnels we're creating are temporary and self-sealing. Elena sighed and gestured toward the new displays. Your calculations are based on incomplete data. You're only measuring three-dimensional effects. The damage you're causing extends through 17 different dimensional layers. Look at your own readings now that you can see the complete picture. The Zalari scientists gathered around the displays, their crystalline forms beginning to pulse with alarm as they saw data that contradicted everything. They thought they knew about their research. The quantum tunnels weren't self-sealing. They were accumulating in overlapping patterns that would reach critical instability within hours. This is impossible, whispered Dr. Kexran, the facility's secondary researcher. If these readings are accurate, we should have seen cascade failures already. You haven't seen failures because we've been stabilizing your mistakes, Elena replied. For the past 6 months, human deep space monitoring stations have been quietly reinforcing the dimensional barriers around your test sites. We've been cleaning up after you, hoping you would recognize the danger and stop on your own. She moved to the central control console and began shutting down systems with an ease that suggested intimate familiarity with technology the Zalari believed they had invented. Unfortunately, your latest experiment pushed beyond our ability to contain safely. You're now 18 hours away from creating a rift that will expand faster than we can seal it. You can't shut down our research, Dr. Vextal protested, though his fear patterns showed he was beginning to understand the magnitude of the danger. This work represents decades of advancement. We're on the verge of revolutionary breakthroughs in faster-than-light communication. Elena paused in her shutdown procedures and looked at the Zalari scientist with genuine sympathy. Dr. Vextal, your people achieved faster-than-light communication 47,000 years ago. You've had instantaneous galactic communication networks for most of your recorded history. You simply don't remember that humans gave you this technology. That's impossible. The quantum communication arrays are clearly Zalari in design. Because we designed them to look Zalari, we wanted your people to believe they had invented them. Elena activated a holographic display that showed the true history of Zalari technological development. Every major advance your civilization has made was guided by human intervention. We left carefully planted discoveries for you to find. We inspired your greatest minds through dreams and visions. We even arranged for accidents that led to crucial breakthroughs. The holographic records showed millions of years of careful guidance. Human agents working behind the scenes, ensuring that Zalari civilization developed in safe, sustainable directions. Technology introduced slowly, always with safeguards, always with careful consideration of long-term consequences. We gave you the stars, Elena continued, but we made sure you believed you had earned them. We wanted you to have pride in your achievements, even though you never would have achieved them without our help. Dr. Kexran's crystalline form had gone completely transparent, a Zalari expression of total shock. If you could give us faster-than-light communication, why are you stopping us from improving it? Because you're not improving it. You're trying to weaponize it. Elena gestured toward the dimensional analysis displays. Your quantum tunnel project isn't designed for communication. Your government commissioned this research to create weapons that could strike targets in other dimensions. You're trying to build interdimensional missiles. The laboratory fell silent. Elena could see in the scientists' expressions that they were beginning to understand the true purpose of their funding. The Zalari military had told them they were developing communication technology, but the applications their government actually wanted were far more sinister. Even if that were true, Dr. Vextal said quietly, why do you care? Why do humans care what we do with our own technology in our own space? Elena's expression softened, and for a moment she looked less like a stern parent and more like a grieving teacher. Because this isn't your space. This is our nursery. Every star system in this galaxy, every planet capable of supporting life, every species that has achieved sentience, all of it exists because humans spent millions of years carefully engineering the conditions for life to flourish. She activated another display, this one showing the galaxy as it had existed before human intervention. Dead systems, sterile worlds, cosmic radiation that prevented the development of complex life. We didn't just guide your civilizations, Elena continued. We created the possibility for your civilizations to exist. We moved stars to create stable systems. We seeded worlds with the building blocks of life. We shielded developing species from cosmic catastrophes. This entire galaxy is a garden that we spent eons cultivating. The Zalari scientists stared at the displays in stunned silence. The implications were staggering. Not only had humans guided their development, but humans had created the very conditions that made their existence possible. Now do you understand why we can't let you destroy it? Elena asked. This isn't about politics or power. This is about protecting the greatest work of art in the universe. Billions of species, trillions of unique cultures, all of them flowering in a garden we spent millions of years planting. Dr. Vextol's form pulsed with complex emotion patterns. But why the ultimatum? Why not simply reveal yourselves and explain? We would have listened. Elena shook her head sadly. Would you? Your government's first response to our emergence was to accelerate weapons research. Your military leaders are right now planning ways to capture human technology for military use. Your politicians are debating whether to submit to our authority or find ways to resist us. She gestured toward the quantum tunnel equipment. And your scientists, brilliant as they are, convinced themselves they could improve on technology they didn't understand, without considering the consequences of failure. The shutdown procedures completed, Elena turned to face the assembled researchers. The galaxy has learned many things in our absence, but wisdom wasn't one of them. You've become too dangerous to guide gently, too reckless to trust with technologies that could destroy everything we've built. So what happens now? Dr. Kexran asked. Elena looked around the laboratory one final time, memorizing the faces of beings whose species she had helped nurture from their first primitive tools to this moment of dangerous sophistication. Now we do what parents do when their children play with fire, she said quietly. We take away the matches. As the laboratory's systems completed their shutdown, Elena began to fade from view, her transportation technology carrying her back to her command ship. But her voice lingered in the air, carrying a promise that chilled the Zalari scientists to their crystalline cores. 6 months after Protocol 7 was implemented, Commander Sarah Chen stood in the rebuilt Galactic Council chambers, looking out at an assembly that bore little resemblance to the chaotic, fractious body that had once governed galactic civilization. The representatives who sat before her were the same beings who had ruled their respective species 6 months ago, but their demeanor had changed completely. Gone was the arrogance, the posturing, the endless debates that led nowhere. In their place was something Sarah had never expected to see: genuine cooperation, thoughtful deliberation, and most surprising of all, gratitude. The quarterly resource allocation reports show remarkable progress, announced Ambassador Zephyr, her crystalline form pulsing with satisfaction, rather than the fear that had once characterized her interactions with humans. Conflict between member species has dropped to the lowest levels in recorded history. Economic efficiency has improved by 300%. And most importantly, we haven't had a single weapons-related incident since the new safety protocols were implemented. Sarah nodded. Though she felt no satisfaction in these achievements, success had come at a cost that still weighed heavily on her conscience. Dr. Corvin, what's the status of the Dimensional Stability Project? The reptilian scientist stepped forward, his scales showing the healthy shimmer that indicated good health and low stress. The repairs to local spacetime are proceeding ahead of schedule, Commander. The damage caused by the Zalari experiments has been completely reversed. More importantly, our joint human galactic research teams have developed new protocols that will prevent similar accidents in the future. Joint research teams, Sarah repeated. That had been one of the most successful aspects of the new arrangement. Instead of simply imposing human authority, they had created collaborative structures where galactic scientists worked alongside human mentors. The results had been remarkable, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were training very intelligent children rather than working with equals. Commander, said Counselor Thex, his insectoid features showing none of the agitation that had once defined him. The species integration protocols you've implemented have exceeded all expectations. Trade conflicts that seemed intractable 6 months ago have been resolved. Resource disputes that had lasted for centuries have been settled peacefully. Sarah looked around the chamber, seeing faces that showed respect, admiration, and something that disturbed her more than fear ever had: dependence. In 6 short months, galactic civilization had gone from chaotic independence to smooth, efficient operation under human guidance. But in the process, they had lost something essential. War Commander Thakvor, Sarah said, addressing the Raxan representative, how are your people adapting to the new military restrictions? The massive warrior stood with the dignity that was characteristic of his species. But Sarah could see something in his 4 eyes that hadn't been there before. "Commander Chen, the Raxan Unity has redirected our military focus toward exploration and cosmic engineering projects as you suggested. Our warriors have found new purpose in building rather than destroying. Our people are content. Content. That was the word that haunted Sarah's thoughts. Every species in the galaxy was content. Crime rates had plummeted. Wars had become impossible. Economic inequality was being systematically eliminated. Scientific progress was accelerating at unprecedented rates. And yet, Sarah couldn't escape the feeling that they had achieved peace by lobotomizing an entire galaxy. "There is one concern," spoke Dr. Vextal, the Zalari scientist whose dimensional research had triggered the crisis. "Commander, our young people are beginning to ask difficult questions. They want to know why humans are so much more advanced than the rest of us. They want to know whether they can ever achieve true equality with human civilization." Sarah had been dreading this question. The youth of every species were naturally curious, naturally ambitious. They wanted to understand why humans could manipulate reality, while they were still struggling with primitive fusion reactors. They wanted to know whether they would ever be allowed to reach for the same heights humans had achieved. "What do you tell them?" Sarah asked. "We tell them the truth," Dr. Vextal replied. "That humans are our teachers and that we must learn wisdom before we can be trusted with greater power. But Commander, some of them are asking whether they will ever be considered wise enough." The question hung in the air like an accusation. Sarah looked around the chamber and realized she was seeing the long-term consequences of Protocol 7. They had created a stable, peaceful galaxy, but they had also created a permanent class system with humans at the top and everyone else in the position of eternal students. "Commander Chen," Ambassador Zephyr said quietly, "may I ask you a personal question?" Sarah nodded. "Are you happy with how things have turned out?" The question hit Sarah like a physical blow. She looked around the chamber at beings who had been reduced to the status of children, who looked to humans for guidance in every aspect of their lives, who had traded their independence for safety and efficiency. "No," Sarah said quietly. "I'm not happy. None of us are." The admission sent ripples of shock through the assembly. They had assumed that the humans were satisfied with their return to power, that they had wanted to resume their role as galactic guardians. "Then why?" asked Counselor Thex. "Why maintain this system if it brings you no joy?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment, struggling with words that could explain the terrible burden of unwanted responsibility. "Because the alternative is worse. Because left to yourselves, you were 18 hours away from accidentally destroying 10,000 light-years of space. Because in the 6 months before our awakening, you started 3 separate wars and developed 4 different planet-killing weapons." She gestured toward the peaceful assembly before her. "You're asking me if I'm happy about turning you into children again. The answer is no. But I'm even less happy about the prospect of watching you destroy yourselves and everything else in the galaxy." "But is this permanent?" Dr. Corvin asked. "Is there any path forward that leads to our independence?" Sarah looked at him for a long moment, then activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy as it existed now, peaceful, prosperous, stable, and utterly dependent on human oversight. "There is a path," she said finally, "but it would require fundamental changes in how your civilizations approach power, technology, and responsibility. It would require you to develop genuine wisdom, not just intelligence." "How long would that take?" Ambassador Zephyr asked. Sarah's expression was grim. "Based on your current rate of ethical development, approximately 50,000 years, maybe longer." The chamber fell silent. 50,000 years of guidance, of dependence, of being treated as children by beings who had transcended their limitations eons ago. "However," Sarah continued, "there is another option." Every being in the chamber leaned forward. "We could accelerate your development. We could share more of our knowledge, teach you more quickly, help you grow into beings capable of handling cosmic responsibility. But that would require you to accept something that your cultures have always rejected." "What?" Counselor Thex asked. "Fundamental change. Not just technological advancement, but cultural evolution. You would need to abandon the tribal thinking that defines your species. You would need to learn to think not as Vorthans or Kalari or Raxan, but as galactic citizens. You would need to accept that individual freedom is less important than cosmic responsibility." Sarah paused, studying their faces. "In essence, you would need to become more like us, less human in the sense of your current natures, and more human in the sense of what humanity became when we accepted the burden of galactic stewardship. The implications were staggering. She was offering them a path to equality, but it would require them to sacrifice the very things that made them unique. "Commander," War Commander Thakfor said slowly, "are you asking us to choose between remaining ourselves and becoming free?" "I'm asking you to choose between remaining children and growing up," Sarah replied. "The choice is yours. We will abide by whatever decision you make. But understand that there are only 3 options: permanent dependence, fundamental transformation, or a return to the chaos that brought us back." She looked around the chamber one final time. "You have as long as you need to decide. We're immortal. We can wait." As Sarah left the chamber, she could hear the representatives beginning to debate the most important question in galactic history. Was freedom worth the price of becoming something other than what they were? Behind her, the galaxy's children faced the same choice that humanity had faced millions of years ago when they first discovered the power to reshape reality. The same choice between power and identity, between safety and growth, between wisdom and innocence. The humans had made their choice long ago. Now it was the galaxy's turn to decide what kind of civilization they wanted to become. And in the depths of space, human monitoring stations continued their eternal watch, ready to intervene if the galaxy's children chose poorly once again. Some responsibilities, Sarah knew, could never be fully abandoned. The galaxy had forgotten humans until one too fierce awoke. Now they would remember forever why sometimes the most terrible power was the power to protect others from themselves.